Do you think geography is destiny? I think it is both destiny and not, because people determine their own destiny. If you surrender to the geography you live in, you will be a country that cannot even fully benefit from its blessings. But if you know how to get the most out of that geography, you can even pacify very big disadvantages. One of the biggest examples of this is Japan. The Japanese emerged from World War II defeated and exhausted, but despite living in one of the most difficult geographies in the world, they created a technologically and economically magnificent country. Not only that, they have become a people who are both respected and exemplary. Of course, the unique and challenging geography they live in has a great impact on this. In this video, we will take a closer look at the geography of Japan and try to understand how this geography has shaped their lives and outlook on life. In the previous introduction, I said that Japan is one of the most difficult geographies in the world. Let's start by explaining this. Japan is a country of islands. They have 6,852 islands, 430 of which are inhabited. The four main islands, Honshu, Hokkaido, Kyushu, and Shikoku, make up 98% of the total size of the country. Most of the population is also concentrated on these four islands. But right from the beginning we encounter the first problem. This is a topographic map of Japan. At first glance, you may have noticed the large number of mountains outlined in brown. Yes, 73% of the land area on these four main islands is made up of mountains. For this reason, the population is concentrated in the narrow plains. For example, although they are the 11th most populous country in the world in terms of total population, their capital Tokyo is the most populous city in the world. More than 37 million people live in the Tokyo metropolis. More than 19 million people live in the Osaka metropolis, which is right next to Tokyo. This is because Japan's territory is about half the size of Texas when you include all its islands. Even worse, only 15% of this total area is suitable for agriculture and housing construction. Their geography is one of the most risky and difficult places to live in the world, not only in terms of landforms, but also in terms of natural disasters. In fact, two of the most costly natural disasters in human history took place within Japan's borders. The first was the Tohoku earthquake in 2011. This earthquake caused the direct damage of $434 billion. The second was the Great Hanshin earthquake in 1995, also known as the Kobe earthquake. The Great Hanshin earthquake also caused a direct damage of $350 billion. The total damage caused by these two earthquakes and other earthquakes was much more than can be directly measured. Japan is located in the Ring of Fire, which is considered to be the most earthquake-producing system in the world. The Ring of Fire is at the intersection of the Eurasian Plate, the North American Plate, the Philippine Plate, and the Pacific Plate. According to official figures, a total of 1,708 earthquakes above magnitude 5 occurred in the country in 2021. 88 of these earthquakes were of magnitude 6 or higher. They have the most advanced earthquake building codes in the world and survive most of these earthquakes with minimal loss of life and property. They also often face the danger of tsunamis from earthquakes both on land and at sea, which they do not feel. Not only earthquakes and tsunamis, but according to the Japan Meteorological Agency, an average of 26 typhoons hit the country every year. In addition, they have 110 volcanic mountains, 47 of which are active. For example, recently, on February 9, 2023, the volcanic Sakurajima volcano erupted. Japan is not like this today. It has always been like this. It was a land of islands with limited settlements. Also, the natural resources of this land are almost non-existent. For example, you must have seen this abandoned Hashima Island. It has been a frequent topic on social media and in the classical press. Undersea coal reserves were discovered here in the late 1800s. After the coal mines were opened, more than 5,000 people started to live on this tiny island. The first reinforced concrete building within the borders of Japan was built on this island. When the coal reserves were exhausted in 1974, Hashima Island became one of the most interesting abandoned places in the world. It is an important example of how important even limited underground resources were for Japan, which was trying to industrialize at that time, and what they did to extract them even under very difficult conditions. On the other hand, the Tohoku earthquake I mentioned earlier also caused the biggest nuclear disaster after Chernobyl. Tsunami waves after the earthquake damaged the cooling systems of the Fukushima nuclear power plant, causing radioactive leaks in the air and seawater. In fact, the nuclear power plant had been built based on previous earthquake and tsunami data, but the tsunami waves of the Tohoku earthquake exceeded these calculations many times over. Nuclear power plants are a critical source of energy for Japan with limited resources. For this reason, when we take into account the habitable plains, they are the country with the most nuclear power plants in the world's smallest area. Today they have 33 active nuclear power plants, and this number was higher in the past. The biggest advantage of Japan's difficult and unsettling geography is that it has never been conquered by any foreign power. For example, the famous Mongol Emperor Kublai Khan, after conquering China, set his sights on the Japanese islands. In 1274 and 1281, he attacked Japan twice. However, both attempts failed due to stormy weather conditions and Japan's geography, which gave it a defensive advantage. In addition, during the famous Edo period, between 1633 and 1853, Japan experienced a 220-year period of isolation that limited its relations with the outside world. The reason for this isolation, to preserve Japanese culture and traditions in an increasingly globalized world driven by geographical discoveries, to prevent the spread of Christianity and Western ideas, and to ensure political stability within the country. Despite 220 years of isolation, the Japanese have at times in their history attempted to invade the east coast of Asia, leaving their islands for better conditions. For this, their primary target was mostly the Korean peninsula, because this peninsula is the closest part of the Asian mainland to Japan. Just before the isolation period, they invaded Korea twice between 1592 and 1598, but they could not hold on to the region. After the isolation period, they went through a political revolution in 1868, the Meiji Restoration, in which they moved from a feudal system to a nation-state system. This revolution was also a move to catch up with the Industrial Revolution happening around the world. Japan industrialized rapidly, but while industrializing, it needed some resources, and like many other industrialized states in the world at that time, they started invasion or colonial movements. Again, their first target was the Korean peninsula. They colonized it in 1910. Then they invaded Manchuria, which was one of the steps leading to World War II. During the war, they pursued an expansionist policy and occupied almost all coastal regions of China, the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Singapore, Papua New Guinea, and Burma. We all know the aftermath. They caused the United States to enter World War II by raiding Pearl Harbor. Although their allies Germany was defeated, they refused to accept defeat and became the target of 2 atomic bombs. The atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were both an end and a new beginning. They were back to square one, their occupied territories were taken away, and they retreated back to their own islands with limited resources and difficult geography. They did what they had to do. They needed to produce high value-added products and get a share of world trade. That is why they became a world giant by producing high value-added products, especially technology and automobiles. The Japanese are dependent on the world for almost all products except water. For example, today they are the world's largest importer of natural gas. They are the world's second largest coal importer. They are the world's second largest food importer. They are the world's third largest oil importer. So they are completely dependent on the outside world. For this reason, they follow as moderate a policy as possible in world politics. They try to get along with every country, because every country is both a market and a potential supplier of resources for them. The Japanese realized that they had to work hard to overcome the geographical disadvantages of their country. They needed this in the modern world in order to survive and live a prosperous life. Despite all their geographical disadvantages, they are considered to be one of the nations that love their land and country the most. They had to take care of every single part of this country to make it more livable. Visitors to Japan feel how much effort the Japanese people put into their country in every detail. This is first and foremost reflected in the country's technological sophistication, products, places, and cities. Those who go to Japan are now in such a state of mind that they attribute the reason why even a natural beauty is theirs to the Japanese. And they inevitably utter that sentence, "The Japanese did it." We don't know what the result would be if another nation lived on those lands today, but the Japanese society made the disadvantaged geography they lived in livable with their intelligence, labor, and discipline. They even created a world giant country out of this geography.